We're live.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brother Richard, for sitting down once again for Behind the Final Call cover story. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, sir.
This is volume number 39, paper number 23. Cover story on this paper is Black Voters to the Rescue Again. Here we go, right there. As I always ask, why this cover story?
Well, you know, I think that this is, again, we're really in a very heated moment when it comes to the Democratic primary, and when it comes to now this drive toward the November presidential and other elections, but in particular the presidential elections. So, first of all, we saw on Super Tuesday, which was a week ago today, today's March 10th, we saw the political resurrection of Joe Biden, who was basically politically dead, except that the voters in South Carolina, black voters, overwhelmingly voted for him. That propelled him then across Virginia, across North Carolina, and across several other states for Super Tuesday. So today could be called Super Tuesday Part 2. You have elections in, I believe, the 6 states, primary elections. And so, in particular, depending on how the black vote does, it could either project Joe Biden forward as pretty much the Democratic nominee, or it could rescue the candidacy of Bernie Sanders. So, really, it's a good story by Barrington Solomon, who's one of our contributing writers. And we just asked the question, one, can Democrats unite? And two, can Democrats deliver for black voters? We have seen traditionally that during the primary, black voters are so essential because they're such a substantial part of the Democratic Party that virtually no Democratic nominee for president can win without substantial black support, right? We've seen it in the past with President Barack Obama. We saw it with Bill Clinton, and we've seen it with other candidates. So we want to continue to watch this presidential election. We want to pay close attention. We're probably going to do another story very soon, maybe next week, about what's in it for black people. But this is a very good story, I think, that raises certain questions. And in particular, the question that we will raise, that we will continue to raise, is, as my brother, who's a radio host at WBON here in Chicago, said, what's in it for the black people? Right? So that's a very important question. So check out Barrington's piece. It's on on finalcall.com. And just, again, stay in touch and stay in contact. Let us know what you think, and let us know what you think about this process. One of the things we note in this article is that, if you remember, at the beginning of the Democratic primary season, reparations was a major issue. But now seemingly just kind of dropped off the page, or as Dr. Ray Winbush from Morgan State University said, it's kind of got lost in the sauce. So pay attention to Joe Biden, pay attention to Barry Sanders, not Barry Sanders, he retired from football. I'm Bernie Sanders. Pay attention to both of them, because I think they both have racial blind spots from two different points of view. As someone who is a socialist or democratic socialist, which I think really means nothing, first of all, to black people, we should not let that label scare us away from him, being that we are here as a result of the American capitalist system. So the question is not what this man calls himself. The question is, what are his policies and what is he committed to black voters, right? So this is a very important election. We need to watch it. We need to stay in touch with it, and we need to figure out what we should be doing. So I think that's it. If that may be.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I want to send a shout out to all those who are watching live on YouTube, as well as those who are watching live on Facebook. Please like and share, and let everybody know that would be enjoying this program and getting the latest on what's going on around the world from the perspective of the Final Call newspaper, that they should like and share.
They need to, when they like it and share it, they should sign up for the little alerts.
They should subscribe and get your alerts and all of that stuff. And you can watch the previous episodes. I'm going to do a short plug. If you go to, and we've been doing this, I think we're going to be pushing, 2 years soon, or at least a year and a half. We got at least 40 episodes that we have out.
You're a pretty good slave driver. You know what I mean? So,
well, please support. Go check out the final. Check out, of course, thefinalcall.com, store.finalcall.com, noi.org, but also check out thecollective9.org, thecollective9.org, and you can actually easily watch a list of all of the videos that we've done and see the work that we've done. So please like and share, support, and all of that good stuff. And we're looking for your comments. So we want to see where everybody is signing in, and particularly on YouTube. I'm looking at those scroll in, so let us know where you're watching from so we can send a shout out to your city as well. So you covered, and of course there's a lot going on with this election, a very important one. But it's very important that we make sure that we're keeping addressed and keeping up to date on what's going on around the world. And even for those who, one of the things that I just think is important that we address is that many of us, even in the Nation of Islam in particular, think that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's perspective was that we don't get involved in politics, that we don't vote. And can you address that a little, because that's not what he said.
No, what he said, I believe is a message to the black man, is what you need is a Muslim politician, someone who is unafraid to challenge the system fully on behalf of black people. And I believe that he also kind of saluted Adam Clayton Powell at that time as a fighter. We also know, as Minister Farrakhan has said to us, and as the late Stokely Carmichael, also known as Kwame Ture, said to us, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad met with people like Stokely Carmichael. He met with people like the brother who ended up being mayor of Atlanta, Julian Bond. And he met with others in terms of supporting them in their quest. I think that what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was saying to us, that we should not be deceived by the political system. We should not be deceived by the promises of the enemy, and we should not be deceived by a process that is a corrupt process. So I think that number one, what he was saying to us is we have to know who we are. After knowing who we are, we have to unite. Yeah. Once we unite, we are now in a position to demand what we want. So I don't think so. This misnomer that the Nation of Islam doesn't get involved in politics, I think is really a simple and actually untrue narrative. What he said was, in politics, just like in everything else, we should not depend blindly on our enemy. We should not believe that everything is going to be okay. We should not believe the false promises of the enemy. So, an understanding of who you are and the need to unite brings us to the point of being able to now access levels of power. The other thing that I think personally is the more that you get involved, right? The more you spend your money, the more you spend your time, the more you go to meetings, the more invested you are in any process. And one of the problems with American politics today is that there used to be talk of voter education and voter mobilization. Very little talk of voter education now. Very little money invested in voter education. Very little money invested in building grassroots power. So what you get stuck with is commercials, endorsements, rallies, where every 4 years or every couple years, there's now a drive for people to come out and cast their vote. But after that, they want you to go back to sleep for 2 years, 4 years, while the ones you elect do whatever they do. Then they come back to you and they either appeal to you based on some emotional appeal or some scare tactic. So now it's, oh my God, the world is going to come to an end if we don't vote to get rid of Donald Trump, right? Or we need to support Barack Obama just because, you know, he's the first black president. We love Michelle and his kids. We got to go deeper than that. And so I think with the wisdom of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, remember also the minister supported Reverend Jesse Jackson in 1984, which was a departure from the kind of overt, direct involvement in a political campaign. But that campaign of 1984 and 1988 were very significant. One, as the minister said, they took the ceiling off the minds of black people about what could happen. The other thing is that Reverend Jackson was able to get concessions from the Democratic Party. Some of those concessions in terms of how delegates are allocated, in terms of expanding the power of blacks in the party as superdelegates, right? Because they were elected officials or former elected officials. All of this was about giving blacks a greater share of power. And that helped to usher in the eventual success of Barack Obama. So, as the minister, as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, what you need is a Muslim politician, and we have some. So how can we have Muslim elected officials today and that not be part of the program?
Yes.
We got Brother Marcus Muhammad, mayor in Denton Harbor, Michigan. We got Brother John Muhammad, alderman in St. Louis. We have judges and we have others that have been elected in different places around the country. And so I think we need to continue to work, and I think one of the other things that Sister Ava Muhammad, national spokesman for Minister Farrakhan, and the lead person when it comes to project separation, has talked about, we need to take control of our communities today, which is basically what the minister said. We need to make our communities safe and decent places to live. And we're in South Shore. South Shore is probably, I don't know, 90% black. So why shouldn't we control where we live? And why shouldn't we have good, honest political representation? We're already separated, but we're in an inferior position called segregation. Separation is between two equals. Segregation is when you are in an inferior position imposed on you by someone else.
Yes,
so around the country, this segregation is already real. We don't live with white people. We basically kind of live where we live. They live where they live. There's some integrations, social integration here and there. But that's not what we want. And we see even, now I'm going to close this point, but we see even when we live in the highest levels of income. I mean, I remember Michael Jordan's then wife, Juanita. This is Michael Jordan, man. Multi-millionaire, worldwide. It's the shoes, be like Mike. But they lived in a suburb of Illinois, of Chicago, and when people came to visit them, their guests were constantly stopped by police. So the question becomes, how do we find a place of peace of mind and contentment? And we say, start where you are. And I'm really a firm believer that once you get involved, once you spend your money, once you spend your time, once you go to meetings, once you organize, once you read, you won't be so willing to let others just do whatever they want to do. You won't do that, because you are now invested and engaged. And that's what politics is about. It is about investment and engagement to protect your interests. But if the appeal to you is only an emotional appeal, or if it's only an appeal for fear, and no real vision, definitely no economic policy, definitely nothing specific, and you kind of end up in the same cage, on the same hamster wheel of politics, if you will. So, you know, that kind of, I hope that answers your question. But I think the, you know, this is why we need to watch and listen very carefully to what these candidates are saying in particular, because all of them, to a degree, want the black vote to save them. Even Trump, he wants to shave off just enough. He don't need much. But if he can shave off just enough of that vote, or if they can suppress the black vote to a particular degree, those are his keys to win. So the black vote is important for him as well as important for the Democrats, of course. You know, they're counting on great turnout from black folks in terms of their attempt to defeat Mr. Trump in November. So all of this matters to us. We should be paying strict attention, and we should be listening. So even, for example, when Mr. Sanders, Bernie Sanders, talks about he's going to revamp education, well, what does that mean? Most educational funding does not come from the federal level. It comes from the state and the local level. And it is often unequal because it's based on property taxes or income or residence. And since we lack in those areas and our children need more services, they end up losing. And how much is spent per pupil? So when Mr. Biden talks about he's going to work with Republicans across the aisle and bring everybody together, what Republicans is he going to work with? What is he going to work with them on? Mr. Trump controls about 99.999% of the Republican Party. The other thing is, like President Obama, whether people want to admit it or not, Joe Biden is not a progressive. He's not a progressive. He's a so-called semi-moderate, or what we used to say during the days of President Clinton. He's kind of Republican-like. So what exactly, when he talks about bringing the country together, what does that mean? Does that mean assuaging the fears of white people? Does that mean getting black people just to say, oh my God, Trump is out of office and now everything is okay? No, we got serious problems. So this is why paying attention to this election is important.
Yes, sir.
Understanding what your interests are important. I mean, we got I think a very important race here in Chicago with State's Attorney Kim Foxx. Black woman, she's been in office one term. She's done some things to try to even the playing field, and she's done some things to try to not have the State's Attorney's office so connected at the hip with the police departments. They should be two independent entities. But for the most part, State's attorneys around the country sign off on whatever the police department says. That's what brought Chicago to the crisis in policing that it came to. Laquan McDonald, the John Burge torture cases for some 20 years, with others that have been shot, killed, tortured, wrongfully convicted, right? Because the state's attorney was not independent.
Yes, sir.
They were basically in bed with the police department. So now you got this system in one term that is moving to try to level the playing field. She's under attack with this quote-unquote Jussie Smollett case. Now here's one case. Now think about this. Here's one case with all the murders, the killings, the shootings, the robbings, the rapes in the city of Chicago. You got one case involving one young man who they accuse of doing something to himself. How is that a barometer about whether or not this woman should be state's attorney?
Yes, sir.
How many people did that case impact? And if they talk about money being spent, that wasn't his decision. That was the decision of the police department. And yet you have people that have lost loved ones that are wondering, where are the detectives? They ain't showed up yet. And I can't think of the clearance rate for Chicago when it comes to murders, but it's abysmal. It's abysmal. You can almost kill somebody in Chicago and almost be guaranteed that you're going to get away with it.
Yes, sir.
So, pay attention.
Of course, that was not a prepared question. I threw that out at him, but I think it was really important, that insight. And one of the things, just in addition, is that, my understanding, Honorable Elijah Muhammad wanted us, that if we do vote, is that he wanted us to be informed.
Absolutely.
He didn't want us to be ignorant voters and just going along with all black people choose a candidate and everybody's
But
supposed
this
to vote.
is, again, one of the problems that we see over and over again. So the other thing I believe personally is that black people don't punish candidates enough. The Jewish people, the gay community, Latinos, and others are unequivocal about the fact that they need to punish somebody. If they see you as being against their interests, what do? They punish people. The late Representative Gus Savage here in Illinois, when he called out U.S. policy and when he called out U.S. support for Israel and the amount of money being sent to Israel versus money being invested in the cities and in places like his congressional district, he was attacked. Money came into his congressional district to support his opponent from all over the country. I mean, think about this. Gus Savage was also closely aligned with Minister Farrakhan. But think about this. Jewish money came in from all over the country. Listen to this. Not a national race. Not even a senatorial race. But a local U.S. representative in Illinois. Jewish money came into the district from around the country to try to defeat him. Ultimately, he was eventually defeated by Congressman Mel Reynolds, who ended up going to jail for some other stuff. Then Jesse Jackson Jr. got in office. He ended up going to jail for something else. So I guess my point is, politics, they say, is the art of who gets what. You got to punish people. You can't just play nice. Everybody's not your friend. So you have to identify your political interests and identify enemies and pay attention. Don't go to sleep. Don't zone out. Don't tune out. See what's happening and then identify what you think is in your best interest. Let alone we got the continuing problem of voter suppression. Right? In Texas, for example, significant number of polling places closed. Other places around the country, ID laws and other actions to prevent voter fraud that doesn't even exist.
Yes, sir.
So we need to, pay attention and get involved with some stuff.
Thank you, Brother Rich. We're going to move on because we ain't got much time. Time is ticking on us, but we want to definitely address this article. Arrest of 6-year-old black girl in school sparks legislative action.
Yeah, I mean, this is really, I don't even know how to even describe this, but there was a video that surfaced of in February of a little girl who was arrested by the police. This little girl was 6 years old. Arrested, by a in-school police officer. Right? Arrested by an in-school police officer. Okay. And she's arrested, and the little girl is crying, and it says that as you watch the video, she's crying. Somebody help me. And then it said that she may have kicked somebody or whatever. I mean, but come on. 6-year-old child. The officer that arrested her was black. He was eventually fired. But the fact that a 6-year-old could be arrested, and this is not the first time. We've seen this movie before. So in Florida, there was a measure passed requiring law enforcement authorities to put procedures in place for arresting children under 10. How can you call that a victim? I mean, think about this. Legislators are trying to do something because they were trying to they were trying to put forward a bill that would prohibit the arrest of children under age 12. The best they could do was say, we're going to pass legislation calling for there to be proceedings. I mean, this is like one of the stark examples about our status or the lack of status in this society. It's a stark example and a reminder of why we cannot live together with these people in peace. Because we see over and over again that our children, who are a minority in the society, end up being disproportionately or over-arrested. They end up being over-policed. They end up being over-suspended. They end up being overly disciplined. Over and over again. And it doesn't matter what age they are. You know, so, I mean, check out this story. It's really something that we need to know about. And of course, once the word got out, everybody started talking about they didn't know. Now the school officials, they didn't know. And the school district, they didn't know. And we never wanted her to be arrested. But there's got to be a better way.
Yes, sir.
There's got to be a better way. And until, I would add this, until we get black people in positions of power and service, right, where they will make sure that policies are executed properly. Because it's not just the policy, there's the execution of the policy. I remember years ago I spoke with a brother from the National Black Police Association, right? And one of the things that he said to me was this. He said to me, actually he said two different things. One, he said to me, he worked in New York. So one brother, a long time police officer, said to me, New York City police officers are the best trained in the world. He said the problem is they don't use that training anymore. Right? That's one. The other thing, I was interviewing a member of the National Black Police Association, and he was talking to me about, well, I was asking him about arrest period. He said, no, wait a minute. He said the process starts with the decision to arrest. He said, so the officer can make a decision, or not can, but makes a decision in these situations, right? About whether to arrest or not to arrest, right? And we see with our children, the decision is disproportionately made to arrest. So again, again, check out the story for yourself. The other thing is, I think we need to be alarmed at now the targeting of black girls and young women. During our Saviors Day convention, there was a movie, a documentary called, I believe, Push Out, which dealt with black girls being forced out of school. Research has already shown that our children are perceived by whites as being older than what they are. I'm talking about little boys, little girls. It's even more shameful, though, when you get a black officer, or should I say a Negro officer with a badge and a gun. And the best alternative he can think of is to arrest a 6-year-old. He can't think of nothing else to do. He can't think of talking to her sternly. He can't think of, let me call your mama or your grandmama right now. Let me tell you, little girl, I'm disappointed in you. None of the things that you do to try to reach a child or to talk to her about, sweetheart, what's wrong? What's going on with you today? Talk to me. Because very often with a child, that's all you need to do. You just need to calm down for a minute and say to them, hey man, tell me what's going on with you. But since our children are not seen as people, since they're not seen as valuable, right? They get treated any kind of way, just like their parents.
Yes, sir.
So, but again, check this out. So let me see, 30. So it's blacks when it comes to who generally gets referred to law enforcement, it's like 33% of blacks in terms of those who are actually kind of brought into these services. But it's a serious situation. And we cannot ignore or refuse to deal with these situations because this is where we're sending our children every day, let alone what they're learning. We haven't even got to what they're being taught. We just got to law enforcement and them being targeted. So again, as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, and the minister said to us, we just cannot live together with these people.
That's right. That's right.
And that's pretty much what it is.
So, jumping to the workshops, which the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan desire for these workshops was that they all deal with the Muslim program in some aspect. And of course, with that, we talked a little bit about the politics in this country, but one of the things, of course, one of the cornerstone events of Savior's Day this year was the town hall meeting. And the Honorable Minister
separation.
On separation, and his goal was, the title was originally, should black people consider separation, but that was changed to the black man and woman must consider separation. And that theme is actually tied to what the workshops were dealing with. And even though, as you mentioned and discussed, our involvement in politics, we have to think of politics as part of a larger picture, because the ultimate goal is that we'll never get the freedom, justice, and equality that we're looking for under this system. So while we're here, we're going to get what we can, but the long-term goal is that we have to do something for ourselves. So we have a few workshops, and you've been covering up since Savior's Day. So can you give us a little snapshot? And I got a bias for this one right here, bringing the educational challenge into focus. My picture didn't make it. I thought I had a little special hookup with the editor, but apparently, I don't. But a little quote is in here from me, but we'll talk about that later on.
Apparently the editor has integrity and is not swayed by personal relationships.
That's unfortunate.
So we'll find a picture. We'll put a little something. Since you were on the panel, you
Yes,
worked
sir.
hard, we don't want you to feel that.
Yes, sir. Yes.
But again, Savior's Day, our annual convention held really kind of started around the evening of February 20th, ran through February 23rd in Detroit. And so we got different workshops talking about real estate, talking about education, and disaster preparedness. So all of this is the work of the Nation of Islam is ongoing, because generally with these workshops, we have things that people are doing throughout the year, that then we come together for Savior's Day, a beautiful time, not just to enjoy the minister's lecture, which drew something like 15,000 people to the TCF Center, included 3 overflow rooms, doors opened at 12 noon, and about 3:30, almost 4 o'clock. We still had people in line trying to get in to hear this magnificent word from this incredible man. The final call dinner, of course, 40th anniversary dinner was excellent. Sister Ava's workshop, town hall meeting on separation was packed. And if you go to NOI.org, and click on the banner.
Or you can go directly to NOI.org/SD2020.
Okay, so you can go there.
NOI.org/SD2020.
You can actually click on these different workshops. You can see the minister's lecture, part 1 and part 2. Part 1 was in Detroit, part 2 was a couple weeks ago here in Chicago. And you got the dinner, and you got the town hall, and you got the drill competition. So again, we are not just people who talk about problems, but the Nation of Islam is really all about solutions. So even while we warn you about the enemy and the depth of his plan, as the minister said at the dinner, let's go ahead and build a nation. So this is the work that we're engaged in every single day, raising consciousness and awareness, but then continuing to do things to bring into reality that which we desire. So check this out. It should be on the website. But get your copy of the paper, get your digital edition. Go to finalcall.com and click on the tab that says digital edition and get it. Also, look for a revamped Final Call website relatively soon. I mean, so I mean, but I mean, you know, so many like disaster preparedness, and in particular, you know, you see what the Muslims have done, and how we just continue to try to develop these systems that will serve our people, because we can't wait for somebody to do for us what we can and must do for ourselves.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Let's keep it moving a little bit. We got something else I know I wanted to cover in here. I think we talked about Trump enough.
Yeah,
Let's skip that.
We might as well go to the Honorable Elijah's article or the minister's article.
We'll close out on some guidance from the divine guide in our midst and his teacher. So let's start off with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Of course, this week the article from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is an excerpt from The Fall of America, Evil Spreading Far and Wide.
I mean, again, the title speaks for itself. But check this out. This is just the first paragraph in the article by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Never, since the creation of Adam and Eve, had there been such chaotic times as we are witnessing today, with the worst yet to come. There is no peace among the nations of the earth. And if that is not a 100% description of what's happening, coronavirus, war, pestilence, lack of peace and contentment, gun deaths, poverty, I mean, all over the world. So you got to read this, you know, because he talks about these are the days of God's or Christ's presence to destroy this evil world with all the deceptions that the people should again labor under wicked and merciless rule of the devil. The presence of Allah has upset the devils who had and exercised total control over the world under falsehood and have made evil to appear fair sailing. So come on and check it out. That's one. I mean, but you know, great insight. Then we have the minister's article this week, taken from his message, Jesus is the key, delivered March 1st and March 9th. This is part 2. So you can get parts 1 and part 2 on the website, and we really encourage you to get the full MP3, DVD, or video download, because this, you know, we try to take key points and present them, and we try to do it in a cogent way, but to actually take time to listen to everything this man said is very important. And this is a great message, man. I mean, it's a great message about Jesus, who he is, why he matters to black folk in particular. So Jesus is the key, part 2. You can go to store.finalcall.com and get the MP3 or the CD or the DVD. And of course, you got to edit the transcript. This is part 2. Go to finalcall.com and get it. And part 1 should already be there. So you can get a nice treatment of this supreme wisdom.
I just want to take a quick note to send a shout out to all those who are joining us live online. We have in the house Indianapolis. We got New York that's represented. We got, kind of scroll through. Oh, yeah? Someone asking us to stream more. And actually, we get it in almost basically once a week. So if you're missing that, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can subscribe on thecollective9.org.
And if there's a greater, you know, I mean, we may try to stream a little bit.
So you got to let us know. Let us know what you want to hear, and we'll definitely get on.
Invite people to join, help us build the audience. We thank you for tuning in. You know, it's a very, I mean, it's been a great time, Brother Troy. Like I said, it's a great slave master, slave driver. He tells me what to do. He don't care. Rain, sleet, heat, snow, whatever. But you got to have that attitude in order to make stuff happen. It don't happen no other way. And he buys me coffee every now and then. So he's
every
out.
now and then.
Every now and then. He's out.
I'm just scrolling through the comments. I don't see any questions, but we thank you again for your support. And I'm gonna close out at this time. Until next time, peace. Assalamu alaikum. Behind the Final Call cover story.
Okay, oh shoot, what time is it? Is it 3?